Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. We have got news breaking all over the globe today, including in New York City, where far-left socialist millennial rapper Zohran Mamdani is the projected winner of the Democrat Party primary, and it wasn't even close, making him the favorite to be the next leader of the nation's largest city. Pray for New York. Plus, President Trump is in the Netherlands, where he and his administration are pushing back hard on these intel leaks about the bombing of Iran's nuclear sites. What are we to believe? Charlie Kirk will be here momentarily to react to it all. But we begin this morning with news on the big, beautiful bill. It's crunch time, guys. They've been debating this for months now, and it's do or die for this thing, and Republicans' goal to pass it before the 4th of July. Here now to explain where things stand, whether this thing is likely to go forward. Remember, Mark Halperin said it must be passed or Trump's agenda is done. And this is the man who can tell us what's going to happen. And that's Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, making his first appearance here on the Megyn Kelly Show. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. It's time you've heard about Riverbend Ranch. Riverbend Ranch is located just a few miles from West Yellowstone, Montana, and is known as one of the most respected Angus ranches in the nation. Angus beef is known for its great flavor and tenderness, but the cattle at Riverbend Ranch are not your average Angus cattle. 35 years ago, using ultrasound technology, the owner of Riverbend Ranch began scouring the nation to identify specific purebred Angus cows that genetically produce a higher level of marbling and tenderness than normal Angus cattle. After over 30 years of careful selection and breeding, Riverbend Ranch developed beef that has superior flavor and tenderness. They take great pride in the humane treatment of their herd. The cattle spend their days in lush mountain meadows of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, and they're raised without the use of artificial growth hormones or antibiotics. This is real American beef, born in America, raised in America, and processed in America. And the beef is shipped directly from the ranch to your home. Go to riverbendranch.com. Use promo code Megyn to get $20 off on your first order. It's absolutely delicious. You can taste the difference. Riverbendranch.com, promo code Megyn. Welcome, Mr. Speaker. Great to have you.
Hey, Megyn, great to be with you. I'm a big, longtime fan, and I enjoyed being interviewed on the TV show many years ago. So glad to be back. It's fantastic.
Oh, I appreciate it. Likewise, you've been doing a great job, and it's been fun to watch you in the new position. One of the few men in America who could actually bring together these various factions within the Republican Party and not get ousted within 10 days of becoming Speaker. So hats off to you, sir. Okay, so this is it. I mean, I think Mark Halperin's right. Like Trump, he needs this to go through, but the Republican Party is still infighting. One of the big sticking points, we're told, is cuts to Medicaid, a rollback of some of those who would be covered by Medicaid. The Democrats ready to make hay out of that, saying the evil Republicans gave tax breaks to the rich, even though you're giving tax breaks in this bill to everyone, but they'll point out the rich at the expense of poor people's health care. And to this, you say what?
Those are tired, old talking points, and they don't work because it does not comport with the facts here. This bill, the one big, beautiful bill, is all of the Trump agenda, all the America First agenda wrapped into one big piece of legislation. So it is aptly named, as the president named it, and we are going to deliver this product for the American people. It fulfills all of our campaign promises and all the things the president said on the campaign trail last year. This is the way to get it done. Real quickly, Megyn, everybody needs to understand why we're using the budget reconciliation process. People get caught up in all the funny terms we use on Capitol Hill, but this is the only mechanism we have to avoid the 60-vote threshold in the Senate. Most substantive legislation, as you know, has to be able to defeat a filibuster and gather, in this case, 7 Democrats to join in. They have no interest in the America First Trump agenda, obviously. So we're using the budget reconciliation process, reconciling the budget in order to squeeze all these big initiatives in. So it's everything. It's historic spending cuts, historic tax cuts, border security, the largest investment in a generation. We're going to restore American energy dominance, and we're going to save these critical programs like Medicaid for the people who desperately need and deserve it. It has been expanded beyond belief. There's fraud.
Yeah, explain what happened in Medicaid, because it's very nice to say, well, we want to cover poor people. That don't be so nasty and mean. We do cover poor people in this country. They actually do have healthcare coverage, but the system has been exploited and taken advantage of. And it seems to me that's what you guys are trying to get at here.
100%. What we are doing is restoring common sense to the programs in order to preserve them because Medicaid is intended to be a temporary safety net for people who desperately need it. You're talking about the elderly, disabled, young, single, pregnant moms who are down on their luck, right? But it's not being used for those purposes because it's been expanded under the last two Democrat presidents and to cover everybody. So you've got a bunch of able-bodied young men, for example, who are on Medicaid and not working. So what we're doing is restoring work requirements to Medicaid. Okay, this is common sense. It's about an 85% approval rating in public polling because it makes sense. If you are on the public wagon, you need to help pull it. And Megyn, all we've done in the bill is add 20 hours a week, okay, a requirement to work for 20 hours a week or be in a job training program looking for a job or volunteer in your community. I mean, that's good for the individual. It's good for the community they live in. We find dignity in our work. And I can go in any town hall in any district in America and explain what we're doing. And every single person at the end of the day, unless they're a crazed socialist, radical leftist like the guy who just got the Democrat nomination for mayor in New York, everybody nods their head and goes, well, yes, of course we should do that. So that's what we're doing. And by doing that, you eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse of the programs, and you preserve it. You sustain it for the people who desperately need it.
Okay, so here's what's happening, though. Notwithstanding, and there's a lot to like about this bill, the permanent tax cuts for everybody. People should know that the Trump tax cuts went up and down the board. They helped poor people all the way through to rich people who are the job creators. So we shouldn't be against tax cuts for the rich because those are your bosses and we want them hiring more people. However, the polls show, and this matters, while Republicans are ready to get behind this, Republican voters, Democrats hate it. And more importantly, independents hate it. The numbers are not good, and they need to be good because you guys are going to lose control of the House if the independents turn on you. Okay, so here's the latest Fox News poll. Overall, 38% favor this thing, 59% oppose it. If you break that down by party, Republicans, only 23% oppose. 89% of Dems oppose, not a surprise. 73% of independents oppose. Same basic numbers from Quinnipiac and others. Here's Harry Enton, CNN's data guy, laying out sort of the stakes and how it looks in the polling. SOT 1.
The amount of disapproval for this bill, holy cow, my goodness gracious. And you mentioned the KFF poll. We're talking about 29 points underwater on the net favorable rating. But that matches the Quinnipiac University poll from last week when it was 26 points underwater. Oh, my God, you need Greg Louganis to get that far underwater. And, I mean, we're talking about a negative 41 net favorability rating among independents in the center of the electorate. You rarely ever see pieces of legislation or proposed pieces of legislation as unpopular as this. But here you see it in two polls. There is a large chunk of the Republican Party that is not in favor of this bill. So this is the GOP with an unfavorable view of this bill. And what we see here is, look at this, 23% are opposed, have an unfavorable rating of the big, beautiful bill. And so if this is the big, beautiful bill, it may be a big, beautiful bill for Democrats if it passes, because they'll have a big, beautiful night come midterm night of 2026.
What do you make of that sentiment, Mr. Speaker?
You can dismiss every single bit of that. Why? Because the reason it's unpopular, people don't dislike the bill. They dislike what they've been told about the bill by Democrats and mainstream media. The beauty of doing this so early, Megyn, and the difference between what we did in the first Trump administration in 2017, I was a freshman in Congress at that time, is we waited until the end of that first year of his term to get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act done. That thing was rocket fuel for U.S. economy. We brought about the greatest economy in the history of the world with our tax cuts and regulatory reform. The problem is we did it too late in the cycle. And so people didn't feel those positive effects before we got to the midterm. We lost the majority in that case. We're not doing that this time. The reason we put this on such an aggressive timetable is because we knew the Democrats were going to go out and lie about it. Of course, they have no policy, no platform to run on themselves. All they can do is pan our work. And they do it with the help of the mainstream media. So we're doing this early enough, Megyn. Here's the key. We get this thing signed by Independence Day, which is our goal. Everybody will feel the effects of this bill, the positive effects of this bill, before they go vote in the midterms. We are going to win the midterms and grow the majority because people are going to feel the effects. As I mentioned, in that first Trump administration, we had the greatest economy in the history of the world. Job participation rate was at an all-time high, poverty at an all-time low, wages rising for every demographic in America. We're going to do that again, but this time on steroids, because this is a larger bill with more of those pro-growth policies, and everyone will feel it. We're excited. The proof will be in the pudding. We can't wait to put it out there.
If the economy is humming in the way it was under Trump 1.0, people will not believe the lies that are being told about this legislation, like all the people who are going to die, according to Hakeem Jeffries. On the Medicaid cuts, though, one thing that did catch my eye for Republican voters is the nonprofit health consumer advocacy organization Families USA says that the Medicaid cuts could lead to more hospital closures, especially in rural areas. And this was an issue, as you know, Republicans in the Senate have raised this for a long time, too. Like they're worried. Republicans in general have been a little worried about medical facilities in rural states. Like we've got property in Montana, places like that where it's tough to get medical care. And they are estimating that as a result of these Medicaid cuts, 55 additional independent rural hospitals across 26 states could experience negative net incomes, leaving a total of 380 independent rural hospitals nationwide at serious risk of closure. That's the kind of thing that could come back to bite you in the next couple of years before the midterms. What do you make of this problem?
We're handling that. Look, I've got a rural district in Louisiana. I have a couple of large areas and a lot of rural areas. So the rural hospitals are an essential lifeline to people all across this country. We're going to protect those rural hospitals. There were some proposals on the table to change the funding formulas, basically under Medicaid, not to get too deep in the weeds. But I don't think that's going to be part of the final bill. A lot of that discussion had been held in the Senate. We did not insert that in the House product that we sent over because we wanted to ensure no cuts to Medicaid. Remember, President Trump said that over and over and over, and we did as well. So what's going to happen here is that if they implement any of that, if any of the formula changes make it their way into the final bill, which I don't think they will, there will be a supplemental piece of the legislation in the reconciliation bill itself that provides an additional account to prop up the rural hospitals. Putting this in layman's terms, that's what will happen. There will be no net negative effect. We're going to protect it.
Okay. There's a Fox News article today pointing out that there still are major differences between the House and the Senate. And I'm speaking here of Republicans who control both bodies for now. That the Senate seems to be doing some stuff that's just not going to fly in the House, and that you need agreement on it, and including the Senate's decision to defer the expiration of some of these green energy tax credits that Biden's Inflation Reduction Act gave them. So Republicans in the Senate want to keep some of those in place because depending on what state they're from, they may like them. And this seems to be a hard no for the House. So how's that going to get reconciled?
We'll resolve it like we do everything else. We really have had a one-team approach on this. I mean, we have small margins, historically small margins in the House and the Senate. We can only spare 3 votes in each chamber. And so Leader Thune and I have been, joined at the hip on this thing. And we've been navigating this through the House for over 14 months. Megyn, we began this process in March of last year, knowing and believing that we would have unified government. We would have this historic moment where we had the White House and the Senate and the House, and we knew we wanted to use the reconciliation process to deliver the agenda. So a lot of thought and deliberations going into this. We're in the final hours of that negotiation, and you'll hear lots of rumor and consternation. And of course, the media and the Democrats are trying to divide Republicans, chamber versus chamber, and Republican versus Republican in each chamber. We're not having any of that. So look, there's a lot of thoughtful ideas on the table. We have broad conferences. They're very diverse, very different districts represented here, and lots of different opinions. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to come up with a conclusion that checks all the boxes. Look, on the IRA, the big Green New Deal, subsidies and credits and all that, there's an appetite amongst all Republicans generally to get rid of all of that. But to your point, there are some states and some districts where there's a lot of jobs being provided initially, for example, for wind and solar, right? So they have less of an appetite. They would like to get rid of it on a slower pace. But I think we'll find the right equilibrium. I can tell you where President Trump is, where I am. I mean, he has no appetite for it at all. He wants to wipe it out entirely. We're going to get as close to that goal as possible.
Wind is a joke. We've got to get rid of this ridiculous reliance on wind energy. Trump's been doing a great job in rolling back those permits and leasing. It's just, it ruins the environment. It ruins the landscape. It kills a bunch of animals that ought to be protected. It's killing whales.
It's not reliable.
It's a nightmare. Okay. Let me move on, and I'll just ask you procedurally about the bill, and then I want to move on to Iran and some other issues. But is it going to pass? Are you guys going to stay now through the weekend? Because Trump is saying, don't go home. Like, no summer recess. You guys stick there. This is my presidency. Get it done. Is that happening?
Yes, the president and I talk about this multiple times every day, and he wants to get it done. We set an aggressive timetable for the reasons we've discussed, and we're going to get it done. He wants to have a signing ceremony on Independence Day. I mean, it would be epic. It'd be awesome. This would be the most consequential legislation that Congress has passed in generations. Truly, it's going to revolutionize everything that we care about and deliver on the agenda. So he wants to get it done. I will hold the members to account on that. And if the Senate does their job as expected by this weekend, we'll stay through and get this thing done. So as quickly as possible under the procedure, I have to let the bill procedurally, I have to let the bill lay over for 72 hours once it's delivered to us, obviously, so everyone can read it and go through it. And then we'll pass this thing. We're going to get it done, Megyn, for the people, and it's going to be a great day for everyone. And by the way, I just want to leave on this point before we leave the subject. This bill is written for and geared to lower and middle income families. It is the opposite of what the Democrats are saying. In fact, people who make more than $1 million are going to benefit the least from the tax policies here. It's geared for hardworking Americans. We're the party of hardworking Americans, and we will demonstrate that in what we do in our legislation.
So your prediction is President Trump will sign this thing on July 4th of this year?
That's my prediction and my prayer. We'll get it done as quickly as possible.
Okay, let's talk about Iran, because we've seen now in the past 24 hours leaks out of the Pentagon of what's been dubbed preliminary assessments on the intel of what our bombs did at these Iranian facilities, in particular Fort Al, the one that we were most targeting. And they are suggesting that while certain entranceways to the facility were damaged, that the program was not annihilated or obliterated, and that the Iranians could restart it within 1 to 2 months. The president's angry about this. So is Secretary Hegseth about these leaks, saying there's going to be a leak investigation. First of all, whoever leaked it went to Natasha Bertrand, who's been the same person saying the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation and Russiagate. But the Pentagon's admitting that there is a document that says top secret that did have some sort of an assessment that looks like this in it. They're pointing out it was preliminary and they had low confidence in it. And the media is now running with this as though it's a final pronouncement on a failed operation by the bomber. So what is the truth, and what do you make of the controversy?
Look, we've seen this movie. You can dismiss all of that. This is low-level leakers who are always trying to undermine the Trump administration and undermine him and his achievements. And that's what this is. This is early assessments. They're unreliable. We're basically looking at satellite images. We obviously don't have people on the ground in these tunnels checking out what's happened, but we dropped the largest bombs ever known to man, short of a nuclear bomb, on this spot, and dropped it, in a small area the size of a air conditioner unit. It obviously did dramatic damage. It will set the program back, and you don't have to take our word for it. Take an independent national agency, the AIEA, or whatever it's called. Yeah, right. IAEA. I got so many acronyms here. But they said, of course it set it back. This is obvious. Now, we'll get more detailed intelligence, but I have had the classified briefings, Megyn, and I'll just tell you, short of revealing any of that, we have high confidence that we did serious damage and we set them back. The best evidence of that is Iran suddenly coming to the table and wanting to negotiate a peace deal, okay? They would not be doing that if we had not hobbled them, right? We took out all of their top echelon of military officers and personnel. We took out all their nuclear scientists, the ones who were at the pinpoint, trying to deliver these dangerous weapons. And remember, that same international agency and our intelligence community determined that they were within days of being able to produce a nuclear weapon. They had enough 60% enriched uranium to develop 9 nuclear weapons within weeks, or at least one within 2 to 3 days. That's what the international agency said. This was an imminent danger. The president acted clearly within his constitutional authority, and he did the right, decisive thing for the people. That's why we elected Donald J. Trump. He's the leader to get it done, and he did.
Why would someone within the Pentagon be leaking that preliminary low confidence report to CNN?
Because, it's the swamp, right? It's the deep state, and it affects every agency, sadly, even the Pentagon. Now, I'll say on the other side of that coin, they kept this mission so secret that there were no leaks prior to the bombing, and that was a great blessing. I mean, that's a nod to our Secretary of State, our Secretary of Defense. I mean, the whole team, the cabinet, did an extraordinary job, and they kept that quiet. But now you have these people who are career bureaucrats, even in the Pentagon, who are really, frankly, a threat to the state because they're leaking information that is damaging to the administration. But it's false. I don't buy that. This is an early assessment. It will be further developed. And I'm telling you, we did enough damage to bring Iran hobbling on their knees, begging for a peace agreement. That was unforeseeable even a few weeks ago. So the job was done, mission accomplished. And by the way, hats off to the B-2 pilots and everyone involved in our unparalleled military who did the job that we're the only country in the world that could have done that because of their bravery and their sacrifice.
Are we on any sort of a slippery slope now that we've effectively admitted we will act militarily to stop Iran from getting a nuke? If they do start to rebuild right away within the next, say, it doesn't have to be 1 to 2 months, could be the next 12 months. I mean, are we now on a course of we're just going to have to keep sending our bombers over there because we've admitted that that's necessary?
I don't think so. I genuinely believe that this is going to solve the problem, at least for the foreseeable future, and as long as Donald J. Trump is in the White House. Why? Because he has sent a message. You see our allies at the NATO summit. I mean, it's like the Lion King, right? Donald Trump walks in and they all sort of bow again. America's back. And let me tell you something. A strong America is good for everyone around the world, and they all know it. And that is peace through strength. That is a policy that we have always believed in, and it's a core principle of the Republican Party. Donald J. Trump knows how to use it. They have to believe that you are capable, and we are. We are the most capable military in the world, the most capable military in the history of mankind. We don't want to use it. President Trump wants to be a peacetime president. He believes that. He doesn't want us to be involved in nation building and interventionism and having wars around the globe. He wants to stop them. And every now and then you have to show that force is real. We did that. Everybody's on notice, and the terrorists and tyrants around the globe are terrified. That's the position we need them to be in.
You mentioned that the president had the authorization, all authorization he needed to conduct those strikes last Saturday. Not everybody agrees, as you know, even within the Republican caucus. Thomas Massie has suggested otherwise. Of course, AOC and others on the left are saying it's an impeachable offense. What about the War Powers Act? What about war authorization and Congress's role in being the ones that are supposed to declare war?
Listen, I'm a constitutional law attorney. You're an attorney. You and I have studied these things. I think we agree on it, Megyn. I'm not sure the War Powers Act is even constitutional, okay? It was enacted by Congress 1973. The idea is that the commander-in-chief is supposed to inform Congress within 48 hours of a military action. And of course, that's kind of a moot point now in the age of 24-hour news cycles and social media. Everybody knows instantaneously what's happening, so it's almost moot. But then he can only act for 60 days until Congress either authorizes the action or declares war. Now, remember, we haven't declared war in Congress since World War II. There's been over 125 military operations by presidents of both parties in that intervening period. And by the way, all these Democrats who are howling right now never said a word when Barack Obama used the authority, or Bill Clinton or Joe Biden, and they dropped bombs in the Middle East. No one said a word. Suddenly, Donald Trump does it. It's a gross constitutional violation. It's nonsense. If you go back to the original intent of the framers and read the Federalist Papers, Federalist 70, Alexander Hamilton, they spoke very clearly about the necessity of having a commander-in-chief that had the authority to act when there's imminent danger to the American people or our interests, our personnel. And President Trump used that authority, as have other presidents, and it's appropriate. This is exactly, I think, what the framers would have had in mind. Could they have envisioned a scenario like this? They would have wanted the commander-in-chief to be able to act unilaterally, because if you waited on Congress to authorize it, we would dither over this for weeks or months. Iran would have a nuclear warhead by the time Congress acted, and I'm not sure we could deliver the votes. So,
well, and they certainly would have had all the nuclear facilities emptied out. The ones that we knew about, they would have gotten all of the uranium removed from those facilities if we had to wait for a congressional debate. Nonetheless, forgive me for bringing her up, but you've got comments like this from Democrat Jasmine Crockett. Here it is.
And to understand enough about the Constitution to the extent that I'm the one that's supposed to make the fucking decision or at least get a vote.
What do you make of that? She's the one who gets to make the decision.
I certainly forgive you for showing it. I would like Jasmine Crockett to have the platform everywhere to talk all the time. She's the best gift to us possible. I want her to be the face of the Democratic Party. She and AOC can lead them into oblivion. That's fantastic. More Jasmine, okay? Because it puts on display what these people actually believe, where their party is headed. They have no leader. They have no platform that they can run on. All of their policies have been repudiated. All they have, they're a one-trick pony. All they can do is criticize Trump and the Republicans. And that's not going to sell, right? The reason we're going to make history and win the midterms and grow the majority in the House so we can do more of this good work is because we're going to demonstrate for all these new demographics of voters that came into our camp in 2024 that they made the right decision. They didn't come reluctantly, Megyn. We had a record number of Hispanic and Latino voters, Black and African-American voters, Jewish voters, union workers. They did not come to us reluctantly. They came with hopeful anticipation. Why? Because the woke, progressive, crazy left them behind. This is not your father's Democratic Party. And Jasmine Crockett is a perfect illustration of that. And I want to turn her microphone up. Let her talk every day. I want to bring her to the floor and just share her heart because that helps us.
She's important. We want to hear from her.
So important. So important.
That Democrat Party you just talked about is on full display, sadly, in New York City today. Can you believe that this socialist, Zohran, why am I forgetting his name? Because I don't know him. Yeah, Mamdani. Just won the Democratic nomination. I'm stunned. I've lived in New York for the past 17 years, minus the last 3. I can't believe even that Democrat Party has done this. What's your reaction?
Well, the best commentary was, I think Ron DeSantis and Florida leaders were trolling New Yorkers saying this is the best thing for property values in Palm Beach, Florida in history.
Yeah.
Because more New Yorkers are going to move to states that exercise common sense, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and I hope they come to my state of Louisiana because it's madness in New York City. What's the problem there? I think these guys in AOC and those types, they figured out how to trigger these young, uninformed people using social media and these other avenues. And I guess a lot of common sense voters are not going to the polls. Well, this is dangerous stuff. And so this guy's now the nominee of the Democratic Party. He is an open anti-Semite socialist. They will destroy New York City. It is a nightmare. So, I mean, hey, go vote for Eric Adams. Like he's the best alternative now. He's going to be saving New York, right, from this madness. And I hope they don't do it for the sake of the biggest great city.
We'd love it if it was Curtis Sliwa, but he's not going to get it because he's a Republican and New York doesn't vote Republican. So the next best option is Eric Adams. All right. Before you go, do you have a few minutes for me on what's happening with this rogue federal district court judge in Massachusetts? This is a crazy story. You point out you're a constitutional attorney, which is why I wanted to ask you about it in addition to your current role. So what happened? The long and the short of it is you've got this judge who Biden got on the bench in the waning days of his administration. He'd already lost. It was December 4th. And they got this guy confirmed, Brian Murphy. And of course, shopping for the right judge, the Democrats they filed a case in his forum to say the Trump administration should not be allowed to deport illegals to any country that they don't hail from, so-called third countries. So if I've got a guy from El Salvador, he's got to be deported back to El Salvador and you can't send him to Ghana. And the Trump administration had been doing that for various reasons. So this judge said, you're right, they can't do it. They can't do it without all sorts of due process being afforded to the already mandated deported illegals. It's not a question about whether they can be deported. It's a question about to where. So he said they can't do it, and I'm going to stay them from doing it, issuing an order staying them from doing it. Then the Trump administration subsequently deported 8 men without all the necessary due process, according to Brian Murphy. And he interfered and said, I said you can't do that. They said, all right, we're holding them in Djibouti before we actually get them to South Sudan, the ultimate destination. And he said, well, now you violated my order. So the Trump administration takes the appeal up to the First Circuit. They say, we side with him. We're going to leave the stay on your ability to do that in place. You're screwed, Trump administration. Trump administration takes it up to SCOTUS and says, this is crazy. You can't stop us from deporting people. SCOTUS agrees with Trump. SCOTUS says the stay is lifted. The case can play out on the merits, but while it does, they're free to deport these people to the third party. And then Judge Murphy comes back in and says, nope, I disagree. You cannot resume the deportations. And he says, because technically the DOJ didn't appeal my second order saying they had violated my now illegal stay. So it's kind of like what we saw with that Judge Boasberg in DC, where the court said, you don't have jurisdiction to be interfering here, sir. And he held on to it anyway, saying, well, they violated my order, so I'm going to hold on to it just as long as possible with punishment. Only here, the punishment this guy's trying to inflict is you have to abide by my now illegal order. That's your punishment. You cannot deport anybody. This is really dangerously unconstitutional. What are your thoughts?
Of course. I mean, look, Murphy and Boasberg are like the poster children for activist judges. This is exactly what the framers of the Constitution wanted to prevent. This is a violation of separation of powers. I mean, they're sort of trying to override the duly elected president, popularly elected president by the people. And it's completely out of control. I'm so grateful that elections do have consequences, and who sits on these benches and these seats is really important. And the Supreme Court, as a conservative majority, they've done the right thing here. But still, in defiance, effectively, of the Supreme Court, you have these federal district court judges acting like they're little kings. It's crazy. Look, we're trying to address this, and this is a serious crisis. I used to litigate constitutional law cases and high-profile stuff, 15, 20 years ago. I would run into activist judges on occasion, but I would just go get them overturned on appeal. These guys are really out of control, and the numbers are as well. It shows. In the last 100 years, Megyn, 67% of the national injunctions issued against a particular president have been issued against one president. His name's Donald Trump. And of those 67 injunctions, 90% of them were issued by the same small handful of activists, where you pointed out people are venue shopping and trying to get into their courts because they know they'll do politics from the bench. And those are like obviously known Democrat operatives. So it's a crisis. We have passed legislation in the House called the No Rogue Rulings Act, which would rein in the ability of single individual activist judges from stopping an administration's policies. That's the right result, and that's sitting over in the Senate right now. But we've got to get control of this situation. I call upon, of course, also Chief Justice Roberts, because he does have some authority within the court system under Article 3 to rein in some of this nonsense. And if they don't, then Congress will take action. We have the ability to limit jurisdiction of courts. We can even eliminate the existence of whole courts, as you know, under the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And desperate times call for desperate measures. We got to get this thing under control.
How far would you go? I mean, they're appealing. Trump's doing the right thing, which is appealing this back up to the Supreme Court, saying, would you please tell the judge you meant what you said and possibly reassign him and give us a different judge, since this guy's out of control, which we'll see what the Supreme Court does. But if the Supreme Court doesn't rein this judge, I mean, this one seems extreme. I don't run around saying this guy should be impeached and that judge should be impeached. Yeah, no, but is there any chance if this guy stays on this course, he might get impeached, Mr. Speaker?
Well, impeachment is a rare result. It's only happened 15 times in the history of the country where we've impeached a judge, and it's for high crimes and misdemeanors. I mean, the last guy was effectively like taking a cash bribe, while he was on the bench. So we believe in the rule of law. We're constrained because we're principled constitutional conservatives. We believe in the system. We're trying to ensure that those foundations are sustained, and we want to work within the system to do it the right way. So I applaud the president. He and I talk about all this all the time. He's going through the system. He's using an aggressive, effective Department of Justice that believes in the rule of law to try to get it corrected appropriately. But if failing that, I mean, Congress does have a role to play, and we'll have to look at that very carefully. But the damage that was done over the last 4 years, in particular with the Biden-Harris administration, the lawfare, the abuse of our system of justice, it diminished the people's faith in that system. You cannot maintain a constitutional republic unless people actually believe that justice is fair and that you have equal justice under law. It's etched into the marble above the door of the Supreme Court. If you don't have that, you lose a critical element of what it takes to keep a republic like ours. We're about to have our 250th anniversary as a nation. Megyn, we're still an experiment in self-governance. We don't know how long this grand experiment will last. It's the greatest in history, but we've got to maintain these critical foundations, and belief in the system of justice is probably paramount among them all.
Mm-hmm. And we're still waiting on the Supreme Court decision on whether these nationwide injunctions are being improperly used by the Democrats. Mr. Speaker, a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, and good luck.
So great to be with you. Keep up the great work.
Oh, good luck. You're going to have a busy week ahead, and we appreciate you putting in the time. Coming up next, everybody, Charlie Kirk is here. As you gathered, there's a lot to discuss. As President Trump is settling into his new administration, one of the top Democrats in Congress aiming to undermine the Trump agenda is Illinois Senator Dick Durbin. And according to our sponsor, the Electronic Payments Coalition, Senator Durbin has a new scheme, a government takeover of your credit card. Today, Americans have thousands of choices in credit cards, but they say Senator Durbin's plan will result in less competition and less security. And that means more risk for your credit and your identity. Learn more at guardyourcard.org, guardyourcard.org, and consider telling your senators to stop Dick Durbin's government takeover of your credit card before it's too late. Here with me now, founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk. He's also the host of The Charlie Kirk Show and one of the top unofficial advisors to President Trump. Charlie, great to see you. There's a lot to discuss today. A socialist is on his way to becoming the mayor of New York City. But before we get to that nutcase, can we just talk about the big W that Trump just landed at NATO today in an extraordinary moment where he's been fighting since term one to get these other NATO countries to pay their damn fair share so that the United States doesn't have to shoulder far more than its respective burden in providing for this defense. We saw it because Trump tweeted it out, a message he'd received from the NATO Secretary General on his way over there saying, what a great victory, Mr. President, 5%, that all these nations are going to be able to pay 5%. Now, Trump had wanted 2% in his first term, so he managed to get even more this time around. And today, here is NATO Secretary General as Trump was sitting there.
For too long, one ally, the United States, carried too much of the burden of that commitment. And that changes today. President Trump, dear Donald, you made this change possible. Your leadership on this has already produced $1 trillion in extra spending from European allies since 2016. And the decisions today will produce trillions more for our common defense to make us stronger and fairer by equalizing spending between America and America's allies.
Extraordinary. Your thoughts, Charlie?
Totally. Well, first of all, for everyone that says he's trying to end NATO, actually he's making NATO stronger, as evidenced by that clip. I have a couple thoughts. So the first of which is that I think this is not a coincidence that this announcement was made official right after President Donald Trump put on a masterclass in the Middle East the last 2 weeks, and after President Trump was basically scolding Iran and Israel, telling them to knock it off, and then he gets right on a plane and flies to Europe, which is, look, these world leaders know that you shouldn't mess with Donald Trump, that when this guy says something, he absolutely means it, that he's calling the shots, that he wants the Western world to be strong, to be confident, to be well-financed. And another component of this, which I think is incredibly important, is this is really good for Europe. Obama tried to do this as well. Again, no one's reporting on this. Obama actually had in some of his official foreign policy documents, going back to like 2010, it's time to try to get the Europeans to pay their fair share. But Obama did it in a typical State Department, bureaucratic, kind of like go through a process. We have to have a committee, we have to have a study, and it takes like 4 years. And then you ask the Europeans, and Europeans are not exactly known for moving fast. And then, next thing you know, it's 2015, like, okay, whatever. Donald Trump just goes into a meeting and he throws it down and he says, you need to pay more. You have been freeloading. We're paying way too much money here for NATO. This is good for Europe. It is a good thing for a country and a series of countries to have a vested interest and to have a stakeholder type equity and to have an incentive in your own defense. It is bad when another country is paying for your own defense. Why? So when something like the Russian-Ukrainian war breaks out, it would be better if Europe was more invested in this, because then they might not want to spend as much money. They might be more invested in peace. It's easy to want war if somebody else is financing it. And that's been one of the biggest problems with this Russian-Ukrainian conflict the last 2 years. Who's sending all that money? It's $200 billion of American money when the rest of Europe is saying, well, America, can you spend more money? So this just goes back to very basic self-governance principles. It's good for Europe. It's good for the Western world. President Trump delivers again something that Obama and other presidents have said they want to do for quite some time. It's a major victory. So you could add it to just the series of accomplishments that President Trump's been able to do abroad the last couple of weeks.
That power, that strength is present here at home as well. And it's the reason why I just finished an interview with Speaker Johnson. The Republicans are going to get in line on the big, beautiful bill. And he's predicting that President Trump will be able to sign it into law on July 4th. thus setting the entire Trump agenda on course for more success. And I think Speaker Johnson made a good point, Charlie, because I asked him about how right now the bill is unpopular, very unpopular with Democrats, of course, but also very unpopular with independents, and many predicting it's going to cost Republicans the House in the midterms. He's starting to persuade me that that may be wrong. I mean, his point was this thing is a lighter for the economy. It's going to set it on fire in a great way. It's going to start rip-roaring the way it did in Trump 1.0, and that's what's going to save Republicans and the House majority come midterms. What do you think?
Well, the other component, I think there's some truth to that for sure. And I think Speaker Johnson has one of the hardest jobs on the planet. I'm very critical of him. He's become a friend, but I don't envy him. And you have to be honest. I mean, to have a 3-seat majority is probably one of the hardest political jobs on the planet. So my heart goes out to him for trying to get this done. But we have to understand about the big, beautiful bill. First of all, we've been so distracted with Iran, Israel, that we haven't really been able to advocate for it properly. So I think some of those numbers are going to turn. I'd love to see President Donald Trump do kind of like a road show. He's at his best on the road. I'd love to see him do like a 10-stop, whistle-stop tour, go to Pennsylvania, go to Arizona, go to Wisconsin, go to all the battleground states and make the case for the big, beautiful bill. For nothing more than just trying to build grassroots consensus, because he's so good at being able to take the abstract and be able to have regular people understand it. That's one of his superpowers. It's one of the reasons why he was able to bring so many first-time voters out. But we must understand this is what's called a mandate bill. Yes, it is June and almost July, and so it feels as if we're so disconnected from the election. But there are a couple different types of bills in Washington, D.C. You have specialty bills, you have policy bills, you have budget bills, and rarely do you get something called a mandate bill. So a mandate bill is where you just fulfill the promises that you ran on. Now, Obama sort of did this in 2009, but he messed it up where he thought that his mandate was to basically obliterate the American healthcare system. With all due respect, Obama won a huge election in 2008. Healthcare was not the major reason why he won. He won because of anti-Iraq war, anti-establishment, populism, all sorts of stuff. So he messed that up. President Trump in 2017, you could make an argument that he didn't also run solely on the repeal of Obamacare, but you might remember Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. They're like, hey, you got to go for the repeal of Obamacare. Remember, Megyn, where John McCain came and gave a negative, like a thumbs down? And that bill kind of was a little bit of a flop. What this is, though, is a mandate bill. Most importantly, it fully finances the deportation agenda and the immigration agenda. On the border,
can I just give some numbers on that? Let me give some numbers on that.
Please.
They're actually pretty stunning. It's the largest investment in border security in a generation, nearly $150 billion to secure the border and deport illegals. $46.5 billion to complete the border barrier system, meaning the wall, et cetera, down there. $45 billion to expand ICE detention capacity. $8 billion to hire 10,000 new ICE enforcement and removal officers. $4.1 billion for 3,000 new Border Patrol agents, 5,000 new Office of Field Operations customer officers, $1.25 billion to hire 200 immigration judges to expand immigration courtroom space. We could go on, but this is the most funding I've ever seen for the southern border. Go ahead.
And we need it. And we need to get to 10 million deportations. Joe Biden allowed 10 to 15 million people in the last 4-year period. We're not even talking about the people that have been here for 20 years. We can have that conversation as we proceed. We're talking about people that have been here for less than 4 years. We know at least 10 to 15 million of them came under Joe Biden. We have to get 10 million back to their country, their home country, by self-deportation, by ICE deportation, and we need more funding for ICE. And so this is the largest funding for that. And you're right, Megyn, on the secondary component this is an economic stimulus, the likes of which that we have never seen. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, Trump's tax cuts, renewal of all the business depreciation side, also the energy components, and there's some other phenomenal components of this. For example, I'm sure you've covered this, but we did this extensively on our podcast, and my friend Brad Gerstner has really been pushing for this, which is the $1,000 Trump baby account. Do you know about this? The investment account where every new baby will get $1,000 invested in the S&P 100 over the next 18 years, which will create stakeholders for the youth of this country. So imagine next July, at the 250th anniversary of our country, President Donald Trump will be able to say to the people of this country, blacks, Hispanics, who have said, politicians have never done anything for me or my kids. Everybody take out your phone to your Invest America app, and I want you to look at the $1,300 that are right there for your kid, and they can access it by the time they get to be age 18. Imagine the psychological connection going into the midterms where millions of people would be able to say, wow, President Trump actually materially delivered for my children. There's so many other components of this bill that are phenomenal. Again, is it perfect? My biggest feedback and criticism, Megyn, is actually what is not in it, which is the spending, which is I wish we were cutting more spending. Honestly, I wish that we did more in cutting spending, but part of it is because we have a slim House majority. With that being said, it's still the largest welfare reform. It's still the largest Medicaid reform. It's still the largest of peeling back the Green New Scam. So you're putting that all together, the big, beautiful bill, we have to get the favorables up. But I think the more that people learn about it, and as they start to see the deportation numbers go up, they see inflation go down, and they see rocket fuel behind the economy, we'll see that the Trump agenda will only get more popular.
Okay, so back to international. On the Iranian front, we've seen this playbook before. And an unauthorized leak comes out of either the intel community or the Pentagon. Here it's kind of both because it's the intel community within the Pentagon. That leaks to Natasha Burstrand, who now is with CNN. But this is the most discredited reporter when it comes to intel leaks of all time. It's a miracle this woman has a job still. In any right world, she would never be allowed to report again on anything related to intelligence.
I totally agree.
She is the 51 intelligence agents say that the Hunter Biden laptop is disinformation person. She was the chief perpetrator of Russiagate. She's a stenographer. She takes whatever her sources are inside the intel community, want her to print, and she puts it on the pages now of CNN. And she takes what's been dubbed a low confidence preliminary report within the Pentagon saying it's unclear exactly what we managed to wipe out with this strike that we conducted on Iran, and that we didn't absolutely obliterate their facilities. We may have set them back by only 1 month or 2. We destroyed the entrances to Fordow, but not the actual centrifuges. Again, how anybody could know that from the preliminary report, which is based on satellite images, remains really unclear. But in any event, she and now the others, because she's like patient zero, now New York Times, all of them are running with it. Trump's mad. Pete Hegseth is mad. Here's Trump just a little bit yesterday ripping on people for repeating this report and for their coverage of what happened in Iran. It's SOT 27.
The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine. They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target with every one of those things, and that place is gone. But when I see CNN all night long, they're trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't really as demolished as we thought. It was demolished. You take a look at the pinpricks, and you see that place is gone. And I will say, I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSDNC ought to apologize. I think these guys really, these networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers. You're gutless losers.
Gutless losers. I just got to add one thing because this just crossed, Charlie. The Israeli Prime Minister's office has just issued the following statement. The devastating U.S. strike on Fordow destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility inoperable. We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities combined with the Israeli strikes on other elements of Iran's military nuclear program has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons by many years. Now, Israel is not in the business of downplaying Iran's ability to get a nuclear weapon, okay? To the contrary, right? So if Israel is saying these attacks have developed or have set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons by many years, you can believe that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have several thoughts on this. The first of which is this was so predictable that there was going to be some unverified leak from the intel community to try to destabilize President Trump, to try to take away from the obvious political win. Think about the political win that is just waiting here for President Trump that is now setting into the narrative. No nukes for Iran, no troops on the ground, no U.S. troops killed in response, no endless war, no quagmire, no nation building. I mean, that's a phenomenal victory, right? It checks all the boxes of what the American people want, which is they don't want another Middle Eastern war, which is something, obviously, I'm more in that camp. But I don't want nukes for Iran, and President Donald Trump was able to accomplish both. So it's so predictable that, as you perfectly put it, the stenographer for the Langley Bugle for the Central Intelligence Agency is leading with a delegitimization campaign. I will say, though, that the most important component of all of this, because a nuclear program is a mindset, we know that, meaning that if you want a nuclear bomb, then you could take out all the mechanical capabilities. You could just wake up one day and say, we're still going to go about and get it, which is one of the reasons why all roads were on the narrative war through Lindsey Graham and James Lankford were leading towards regime change, because they're not wrong. They're totally wrong that regime change is a good idea. It's a terrible idea, and it remains a really bad idea. But as long as a regime wants a nuclear weapon, you'll never actually be able to get rid of their ambition for a nuclear weapon. So there's a difference between nuclear capabilities and a nuclear program. Their nuclear program will continue to exist as long as they want one. I know we got to go in a second, but let me just kind of summarize it by saying this. The most important thing, though, that the Iranians now have in the back of their mind, if they continue to pursue a nuclear bomb, Trump might bomb them from the sky, is that regardless of the timeline, it's finally real-life deterrence that somebody might come in and interrupt it. And by the way, if you're a scientist, you might get assassinated. If you're a general, you might get taken out. And so beyond the actual timeline, which is a less important component of here, in the back or the front of all their minds in Persia, they're thinking, boy, do we really want this? Because just put all this money into it, we might get taken out in real time.
Yeah. All right, there's more to discuss. We're going to take a quick break, and we will do that on the opposite side. Charlie Kirk is with us for the remainder of the show. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you can impact your family, friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of September 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. These days, it feels like everyone has an agenda. The media, big tech. But let me tell you about Ground News. They do not filter the news. They show how stories are being shaped, spun, or ignored entirely so you can decide what to believe. Ground News is an independent app and website built to give users control over their newsfeed. It aggregates coverage from across the political spectrum and breaks down how each outlet is framing the story, including bias, ownership, and what key details might be missing. If you're tired of being told what matters or what doesn't, it might be time to take the power back. Ground News is offering 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan for a limited time. This offer is available exclusively at groundnews.com/Megyn. That's ground, GROUND, news, NEWS.com/Megyn. Don't let anyone else decide what you get to see. Take back control of your newsfeed today.
When you talk to the people who built the bombs, understand what those bombs can do, and deliver those bombs, they landed precisely where they were supposed to. So it was a flawless mission.
Flawless.
Right down where we knew they needed to enter. And given the 30,000 pounds of explosives and capability of those munitions, it was devastation underneath Fordo. And the amount of munitions, 6 per location, any assessment that tells you it was something otherwise is speculating with other motives. And we know that because when you actually look at the report, by the way, it was a top secret report, it was preliminary, it was low confidence. All right, so this isn't, you make assessments based on what you know.
They don't. It said it could be very devastating, very serious.
Moderate to severe, and we believe far more likely severe and obliterated.
Is there a leak investigation?
Is
there a leak investigation?
Of course, we're doing a leak investigation with the FBI right now because this information is for internal purposes, battle damage assessments, and CNN and others are trying to spin it to make the president look bad when this was an overwhelming success.
It's absolutely disgusting. Welcome back to the MK Show. Charlie Kirk's back with me. So you have a lot of sources within this administration, as do I.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing over and over from them is that, for lack of a better term, the deep state is real. There are people working actively to undermine the Trump agenda, notwithstanding who he's placed atop these agencies. And in this particular case, it's the Pentagon. to undermine him, to embarrass him, to stop his agenda, to leak to just the right reporter to make him look foolish in a way that may have substance and may not, may have some foot in fact and may not. But this is what they're up against. They can't even keep some intel person working at the Pentagon to toe the fucking party line. And I don't mean lie. I mean, don't leak preliminary low confidence reports to try to make, it's not just Trump and Hegseth, it's the United States look weak, look feckless, look like it failed. Look, if we didn't obliterate everything, okay, fine. We obliterated a lot. That's what's going to be the takeaway. But this is done for a political purpose. And the compliant media does what it always does. It's stomach turning, Charlie.
It is. And these are the same people. So just understand the sickness from the media here. Here they are willing to publish a unverified battle assessment report, which is incredibly murky. And they're like diving into sources. The same people that ignored Biden's mental decline for 4 years, Megyn, think about it. So they ignore the thing that we all see of the commander in chief, and they're willing to go to some unverified, very cloudy, it might not done as much damage that we'd like. I mean, this is a repulsive sickness that has infected the American press corps, where they ignore the obvious and the important and the flagrant, and they highlight the unclear, all for a very specific political agenda, just to try to get after the commander-in-chief. And let me repeat why. It's because they know that if this narrative continues to build, President Trump will be one of the most popular presidents in the modern era. Because you think what he just pulled off, no, you think about it, it's mind-boggling, and they see it, they say, oh, no, he looks way too good here. We have to try to cast doubt. We have to try to, make people second-guess it. And look, I think Pete Hegseth is doing a great job. I think Marco Rubio is doing a phenomenal job. That whole team has not had an easy task in front of them. They've been traveling around the world. They've been to Saudi Arabia. They've been to NATO. They're doing this Iran-Israel thing. And let's also appreciate one other component here. And I'm not the first one to notice this. There were no leaks ahead of this bombing campaign. Right. None. Right. And, they were hitting Pete Hegseth
and now
really
the little
hard,
minions are angry. Now the little minions inside the Pentagon are angry about it. And now they've got their first, taste of classified information on the results and are running to the Natasha Burstrands of the world to try to make it look bad. Oh, see, it was a shitty operation. I didn't have part in it, but it was terrible. They screwed it up. They didn't actually get to the uranium stores.
Yes, and that goes to show what their incentive and their motive actually is. They don't care about pursuing truth or exposing power, because they don't do that for the Democrat side. They never have and they never will. Right. It's just about stopping a certain philosophical agenda that President Trump represents, which is to make our country strong, to bring us back to greatness. And this right now is without a doubt one of the greatest foreign policy accomplishments we've seen in the modern era. President Donald Trump could win the Triple Crown. He could solve the India-Pakistan war, which was getting really hot really quick, and they give him credit for that, solve the Iranian-Israel war, and potentially solve the Russian-Ukrainian war. They know what that means, and they're trying everything they possibly can to try to make it murky and to make him unpopular. And thankfully, there's enough pushback against kind of these reporters that do whatever the intel agencies want. But understand this, that when you take over the CIA, you only get a couple civilians in an agency that has like 100,000 people. I don't think it's 100,000 people. It might be somewhere between 50 to 60,000 people. We actually don't know in CIA. Think about it. So at DOD, there are like 200 civilian spots of people that run SOLIC and Assistant Secretary for Policy. I mean, the chart is unbelievable at the Department of Defense. If you go to the Central Intelligence Agency, it's like John Ratcliffe plus like 2 people. It is almost an entirely career-driven operation with almost no political appointees whatsoever. And that is the deep state on full display, which is one of the reasons why President Trump, I think, needs to develop Team B. Reagan had Team B. Team B is the creation of another group of people that interpret the intel, that double-check what the intel the President Trump is getting every single day. J.D. Vance can run it. You can have Amaryllis Kennedy, whatever. Again, I'm not the first one to propose this. Steve Bannon has said this before, but we need to really kind of build a grassroots movement for this. President Trump could do it with a stroke of a pen. Say, okay, do it. Where Team B is constantly double-checking the intel. Are you getting the truth? Are you getting the whole picture? And what Reagan found is Team B would catch a lot of errors from the usual intel flows from Langley.
It's so shameful that we can't trust our own, employees. They have a new boss and they have a new agenda, and their job is to enact it. And instead, they work to undermine him at every turn. You mentioned the Ukraine war. There's some breaking news on that. Trump and Zelensky met. Zelensky just posted to X, "I had a long and substantive meeting with President Trump. We covered all the truly important issues. I thank Mr. President. I thank the United States. We discussed how to achieve a ceasefire and a real peace. We spoke about how to protect our people. We appreciate the attention and the readiness to help bring peace closer. Details will follow." I don't know whether we're going to achieve peace between Russia and Ukraine. I mean, at some point, it's going to have to end. But I think just the tone of that is encouraging. I think Zelensky has taken the lesson that was delivered to him in the Oval and is now understanding. As Trump said, he has no cards to play. And really, he is in a submissive posture. There's no good that can come from him antagonizing the president or vice president. And what he needs to do is curry favor with this president and let President Trump come to his own conclusions about how impossible Vladimir Putin is to negotiate with.
Yes, and reports are saying he might have actually wore a suit. And so we're really making progress here.
Saw that. The jacket, at least.
At least the jacket. At least the jacket.
It's a
but
start.
the whole kind of like I'm going to go work out at Planet Fitness look seems like it's a little old. Okay, the Planet Fitness gig is not good. But no, look, if President Trump doesn't have enough on his plate, he's now trying to, and I think he will. Look, I'm optimistic that we're going to reach some settlement between Russia and Ukraine. It's not good for either country. And again, it's a killing field. 6,300 people died last week, and that just drives the president nuts. He hates to see unnecessary killing. And what are they fighting for? Another 30 miles here or 40 miles here? And this is a territorial dispute where it is not even clear what the purpose of victory is. And each side is just getting more and more, let's just say, radicalized as this war continues. And we saw, by the way, with the Israel-Iranian ceasefire, which was one of the more confusing ceasefires I've ever seen, that it's really hard to actually broker a ceasefire. It's not unusual for people to want to get the last shot, to want to get the last missile. But do you know what it took? It took President Donald Trump dropping the F-bomb at 6 a.m. in front of the sticks before he flies to NATO, where he says they don't know what the F they are doing. And that was like the F-bomb heard around the world. He might as well dropped an atomic bomb. People are like, whoa. And you know what's amazing? As soon as he said that, all of Israel's missiles stopped. All of Iranian missiles stopped. Because guess what? Dad was mad. Dad was back. He's in charge. It takes an alpha male and takes somebody with the energy and the poise and honestly the confidence to end this. And I think and I hope and I pray that we can get peace between Russia and Ukraine.
It's funny because a lot of people were saying that exchange was giving them divorced parent vibes, listening to Trump. And you call him dad. You're not the only one. The NATO Secretary General called him dad, too, in this exchange that just came out. Here it is, SOT 23.
They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes. Then it's easier to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
Daddy has to use a strong language.
And I was joking around. I said, so imagine being at NATO, right? These are all just like bureaucratic, technical, very European educated professors. You know the type, right? They're very like focused. They're very German in the way they present themselves, very orderly and organized. And they overanalyze everything. So they're preparing for Trump's arrival at NATO. And they see Donald Trump on no sleep go to the sticks, dropping the F-bomb. I'm mad at Israel. I'm mad at Iran. And I'm coming to NATO. And these NATO guys are probably like, oh, my goodness, what are we supposed to do with this? Just give him whatever he wants. I mean, this guy is on one. Because, look, we hold all the cards.
Charlie, you can kind of see them coming along, though. Can't you? You can see the second piece of that, which is like, I'm kind of into it. Wait, I'm starting to feel a little inspired. You know what? He might be onto something.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing is that over time, you know, Trump really kind of wins you over, right? Because the world's a dangerous place. And, you know, Trump has a very, you know, he has a rhetorical genius to him. Not everyone quite understands it. But deep down, Europe is like, wow, you know, we're being invaded by Mohammedism. We're being, you know, Putin is invading Ukraine. We have the Chinese threat. Maybe this guy that talks, but also delivers a big game. He's the best hope for the West. And I totally agree with you. You can start to see that in 2017, 2018, when Trump went to NATO, there was scorn and there was like, who is this guy?
Yes.
And how do we get rid of him? How do we cleanse ourselves of this filth? Now it's kind of like an admission. It's like, this guy's in charge. The Western world acknowledges that America holds the cards. And we want to be successful. We want victory. And again, for President Trump, just the reconfiguration of the attitude of NATO has been one of the most striking things to see of Donald Trump's entire career.
He truly is winning. He has a winning mindset. He has a success mindset. He has an abundance mindset. And that can be very intoxicating. If you spend enough time around it, you start to see possibilities that you didn't see before. And it's funny to watch it happen even with these NATO guys who, like you point out, loathed him very, very recently. Here's Trump. He's speaking now and said the following on Iran. As you know, we carried out a massive precision strike. Very, very successful. It was called obliteration, which is funny. That's how it was called that by him. No other military on earth could have done it. Now we've paved the way for this historic ceasefire agreement. It's the 12-day war. We think it's over. I don't think they're going to be going back at each other. That's what's so extraordinary. What may have happened on Saturday night is the entire Israeli conflict may be over now. The 10-7 response may be over now. They've basically obliterated Hamas, substantially, if not entirely, obliterated Hamas, and then brought it up to Hamas's sponsor, Iran. And now, if there's a real ceasefire here, that war is over. And all that remains is to get the hostages back and figure out, just the small matter of figuring out what's going to happen with Palestine. There's that. Yeah, but really, President Trump doesn't have to do that.
No, he doesn't have to do that. I would like to see an end to the war. No one likes all this killing in Gaza. Look, I'm pro-Israel. You're pro-Israel. I'm on Team Civilization. But these are people made in the image of God. I don't like to see them scattered. We want to try to have wealth and abundance and prosperity. There is a serious problem. A lot of them are incredibly radicalized, and the big tell is no one in the Middle East wants them. Jordan doesn't want them. Egypt doesn't want them. Saudi Arabia doesn't want them. They're kind of a people without a home, and they're an unwanted people, which is really sad because I guarantee you there's like young kids that have done nothing wrong, of course, in that couple million group people. So they got to figure that out. I have no idea what to do there because the old model of you just have this hot box of terrorism and it bubbles up. It's unsustainable. It's bad. It does not work. So there has to be some sort of brokering there. But that's not President Trump's job, right? He's the President of the United States of America. What he should do is try to broker a settlement, bring the hostages back, end it, and say, look, you guys got 90 days. Try to figure this out. But we're not taking any refugees. We're not doing any of this. We're Islamic importation of it into the West, but we got to figure it out. But most importantly, though, is that President Donald Trump, as you could see, he wants to try to get all the focus on our hemisphere. Hemispheric hegemony is part of his MAGA doctrine. Okay, we'll solve Israel-Iran, we'll solve Israel-Gaza, we'll solve India-Pakistan, we'll solve Russia-Ukraine, and then come back to our hemisphere. But one of the most important foreign policy goals that he has is Panama Canal and Greenland. We joke around about those two. They're incredibly important from a geopolitical standpoint, from rare earth minerals to trade to international waterways. That's far more important, by the way, than what we're seeing, in the Middle East right now for American future. And basically, and by the way,
President Trump did not manufacture this Middle East conflict. This wasn't like he came in and said, "Let's do something in the Middle East."
It arrived on his doorstep.
This is foisted upon him. This is him handling a crisis that was unforeseen. I'm sorry, but like a boss. Go ahead.
No, I completely agree. That's right. He handled it like a boss, and he didn't want it to last long, and that's what I love about it. On one hand, you have Dick Cheney, who's like, Iraq might have weapons of mass destruction. Give me 500,000 troops, 8 years, and $2 trillion, and I'll find out he doesn't have them. Donald Trump says, Iran might want nukes. Give me 12 days, 30 pilots, and, no troops on the ground. What a contrast, right? And President Donald Trump was able to get done in 12 days what, Dick Cheney and George Bush, it took them 10 years of nation building, and the Iraq War will go down as one of the greatest disasters and mistakes in the history of our country. But also, right up to our own country, remember, on the first day, President Donald Trump signed a declaration, a proclamation, I should say, that did not get a lot of coverage. He designated the cartels as a foreign terrorist organization. That means in the eyes of the American government, the cartels are indistinguishable from Hamas and Hezbollah, as it should be. And so President Donald Trump wants to focus on our hemisphere. He wants to have more focus on the cartels and less focus on Iran. So he's trying to get these things done in the first 6 months of his administration so that he can then have all the remaining 3.5 years on our hemisphere. Get Panama done, get Greenland done, wipe out the cartels and get them severely and significantly diminished, which every day the cartels are killing Americans. Let me say that again. Every day the cartels are killing Americans. That is an existential threat to our country. And that truly is America First, which is to march forward and to sequence it with a crescendo that all emphasis comes to America and our borders and our hemisphere.
What I've got to ask you to weigh in on the internal civil war, whatever you want to call it, that happened in advance of the Iranian strike. Our mutual friend Tucker was very outspoken against it. Trump did it anyway. He did hear people out. He met with you, he met with Bannon, he talked to Tucker. He decided to go a different way. But what do you make of, the division? Because I don't even know if it's the left. It seems more like the neocon wing of the party is very celebratory that he didn't listen to Tucker and others like Tucker. And I just don't see it like that. I mean, Tucker's got his very strong views. They're very sincerely held. And I think to his credit, he voiced them. Even though he loves Trump, he voiced them and he said, I don't agree with it. And then when he felt he went too far, he apologized to the president for the way in which he did it. Didn't cause him to abandon his views. But in any event, some on the right, I think even more than the left, are having a lot of fun with this like civil war. And you're on the so-called unofficial board of directors. So what do you make of it?
Well, I mean, if you followed my feed the last couple of weeks, I haven't engaged, and I don't do this actually, in any of the back and forth of the personal stuff. I'm like in a unique spot where I call Tucker a good friend. I call Tucker a good friend, and I call Mark Levin a good friend. I'm actually in a unique spot. And, they obviously have the agency to do what they want to do. I've tried to take a bigger picture view, and my statements were always very clear, both privately and publicly, because you're right, I meet with the president, talked about this, and I said, I trust you 100%, Mr. President. Whatever you do, we have your back, but allow me to try to introduce one element, which is the younger voters that I represent on college campuses. They are war-weary. They don't want foreign conflict. They don't want foreign intervention. And so just please keep that in mind when you're going about this, that you won the youth vote, that we have this incredible under 30 coalition. It's my 13 years of labor and toil, and only because of you it's possible. So please, factor that in. And he did, it seems like, right? He didn't want something long, and he accomplished all of it together. And so, and I think it was important that those of us kind of introduced some caution into the conversation, because if you don't introduce caution into the conversation, things can get wildly out of control. And I was good for my word, by the way. As soon as those strikes were launched on Saturday, and Megyn, you can attest to this on social, I had the president's back resolutely. I said, we must trust President Trump. He made the right decision. We stand with President Trump, as I said I would, and I did. But look, I think a lot of this can be healed and remedied. I did predict this. I sent out a tweet before all this. I said, look, if for those of us that do this professionally, there is no greater divide on the American right than foreign policy. It's like we're largely in agreement on immigration. We're actually really in agreement on the trans stuff. But like the greatest fault line of the conservative movement is foreign policy. And I was really worried that this was going to bring it to a not catastrophic, but very unpleasant moment. Turns out I was partially right because no one has liked to see what we've seen on X the last week and a half. It's just been seeing a lot of our friends fight. It's been really kind of nasty. I've taken a different tact, which is let's just keep it about ideas. Let's also understand that there might be a third or fourth way. It doesn't have to be a binary of interventionism versus isolationism. To be perfectly honest, I tend to be very skeptical of interventionism, but President Donald Trump has really pioneered a third way, and he rejected that binary, which is no permanent wars, but violent, precise, short-lived action in America's interest. And by the way, he now has a remarkable track record for this. Megyn, think about it. It's take out Soleimani, taking out al-Baghdadi and ISIS, airstrikes in Syria, and now the strikes in Iran, none of which resulted in American troops dying, none of which resulted in permanent war. I tend to believe that a lot of the tensions are going to go down. I actually seek to be a peacemaker here. We have our upcoming Student Action Summit, which you're speaking at in July. Megyn, we're really excited. The audience can get their tickets. SAS2025.com. We'll have thousands and thousands of people there, nearly 10,000 people. And I want to try to bring unity to this movement because we have so much more together that divides us. I know that sounds so just cliche, but it's true. We have a real enemy, which is the American left. And I think we should try to introduce some new rules that we should, with great spirit and great energy, debate foreign policy, but let's stay outside of the name calling, right? I don't think that helps us at all. I think the left found some enjoyment in it, but I'm all for a unscripted, full, no holds barred rhetorical melee about what the foreign policy agenda of the American right should be. I try to stay out of it, and I think that because of that, at least our podcast was more popular than ever this week, Megyn. We were right up there, right behind the New York Times and 3 on the Apple News, because we were one of the few shows that wasn't getting into, well, I hate this person, I hate that person. We were just presenting it from a very fair, neutral, pro-Trump, pro-American perspective.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, we too don't choose sides in these wars. To me, It's very important to be able to have access to both sides and to be able to fairly present both sides' arguments and let the audience decide. But there is one side that I'm very against on anything related to President Trump, and that's the left. Here's the John Kerry takeaway on what happened in Iran Saturday. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's believable, but it's unbelievable how cynical and negative these people are, no matter how stunning the accomplishment. Here he is, SOT 29.
Iran is a proud, proud, proud nation. One of the things I learned in my negotiations was the level of pride was just enormous. They also have been committed to the destruction of Israel. That's a cultural, almost religious component of their policy. But I know this. You cannot bomb away the memory of how to make a bomb. You can't bomb away the knowledge that they have developed. You can't bomb away, the broad array of technicians who've been working on this for years.
Actually, you can bomb away the broad array of technicians. Israel did it.
Yes,
they executed
That's
them
right.
man by man. But what a takeaway. Like, it was all a waste. Instead, what we need is more negotiation. That's really what he's saying, Charlie. We need the Obama-Iran deal that he negotiated that allowed them openly to continue pursuing their nuclear program, not to mention to proliferate their ballistic missile program like it was going out of style, with boatloads of cash from the American taxpayers to supplement it.
He's mad that he's being embarrassed because the entire Obama approach to Iran was wrong. But let me just first comment, like, what a relic from the past, like John Kerry. I haven't heard from him for 6 years. Every time I hear John Kerry, I think of President Trump's comedy routine about John Kerry on the bike. Do you remember that? For like 3 years, he wouldn't stop talking about how John Kerry can't ride a bike. He says, what are you doing riding a bike at that age? It's like one of the funniest kind of Trump shticks.
Say we have to have the hostages back. They will say no. You leave the room and you double up the sanctions. Within 48 hours, you'll have your hostages back, believe me. But they didn't do that. Kerry never walked. The only time he walked is when he entered a bicycle race. Can you believe this guy? 73 years old. It's real. He fell off his bicycle and he broke his leg and he was out of the negotiation for 3 or 4 weeks. And they probably did better in the negotiation when he wasn't there.
Anyway, back to Kerry. This is a lesser reported element. Trump tried diplomacy first. He did, to his great credit. There was a 60-day diplomatic window, and Iran decided to kind of do the tap, tap, tap along. And on day 61, President Trump took Israel off the leash. He said, the negotiations aren't going anywhere. You guys act how you guys want to act. John Kerry, the biggest problem and the biggest criticism that we can issue to John Kerry and Obama was that they allowed Iran to remain cash flow positive. Then they could use that money to develop ballistic missiles and then use that money to then develop a nuclear program. The money was used for pernicious and sinister purposes. President Trump cut off the money, which gave him more leverage and negotiating power. But yeah, I mean, John Kerry's actually half right. The Persian people are a proud people. The problem is the mullahs are an ideological regime. They are. They are not pragmatic. They don't want what's best for the Persian people. They want some sort of weird international Shia Muslim takeover of the world, which involves the eradication of Israel, which they call the Zionist oppressor. And then on top of that, they just outright threaten the abolition of Israel. They they evidently, through their actions, are willing to send missiles towards civilian centers there. And so John Kerry's just super mad that Donald Trump got done in 12 days what he was not able to do in 8 years under Obama.
Here is part of the Iranian regime's constitution, okay? In the organization and equipping of the country's defense forces, there must be regard for faith and religion as the basis and rules, their basis and rules. And so the Islamic Republic's army and the Corps of Revolutionary Guards must be organized in accordance with this aim. They have responsibility not only for the safeguarding of the frontiers, but also for a religious mission, which is holy war, jihad, along the way of God, and the struggle to extend the supremacy of God's law in the world. Against them, make ready your strength to the utmost of your power, including steeds of war, to strike terror into the hearts of the enemies of God and your enemies and others beside. This is quotation from the Arabic. Ayan Hirsi Ali sent that to me. And it was a reminder of what they actually stand for, just like Hamas, which is the elimination of the infidel, starting with Israel, but America's a close second. So you're exactly right. The Iranian people, like Yashar Ali, who's a great follow on Twitter and a great reporter, and is Iranian by birth, has been tweeting about this. There are absolutely lovely people in Iran who actually we could
Persian
totally get
people are
along
awesome.
with, who want to have,
Some of my
yeah,
great
they want to
friends are
have
Persian. I totally agree.
they want to raise their family in peace. They don't want to be at war with the world, but the regime, it's a non-starter. They cannot be negotiated with.
Totally.
Really, they only understand force, and now they understand it in a particularly unique way. All right, let's move on, because we got to talk about the fact that New York is becoming a communist Bolshevik town. It's incredible. I'm sorry, I've lived in New York State for 50 years and only recently moved to Connecticut and New York City for 17. I can't believe they've done this. How did we go from Giuliani, Bloomberg, cross over de Blasio and Adams to a socialist who now is very likely to win because anybody who gets the Democratic nomination wins? Now, it's true, some people will organize against him. Some New York business leaders are very scared. Some Jews in New York are very scared that this guy who defended globalized the Intifada recently on a podcast at the Dispatch is their next likely mayor. So they could potentially organize now in a way they didn't before the primary to stop him. But if you had to put money on it, you'd have to put it on this guy becoming the next mayor. What does this say about New York and our country?
Well, a lot. And I'm going to push the envelope a little bit, Megyn. So you have to give me, and you can push back at any time. So I think it's very
you're in trouble.
talk.
I saw you're in trouble with Jessica Tarlov of Fox News on the internet.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say it here on air because I just I don't hide from my opinions. But yes, and you can push back and disagree, and I'll give all the proper caveats, which of course I believe in. But yes, the socialism part is very important. I mean, he has like some of the dumbest ideas imaginable, which we're going to have city-run grocery stores. Yeah, that works really well in Cuba. Bring back bread lines, right? Mamdani 2025. And obviously he wants to tax the rich. He wants to take more money away from people. All that's super bad. He wants to defund the police. He's on the record saying defund the police. He wants to send social workers instead of cops. But like, we need to also understand, and we have to be very delicate how we talk about this, and I'll give all the proper caveats, right? Not every Muslim is bad. A lot of Muslims are really decent and good people. My primary care doctor is actually Muslim. I've endorsed someone running for office as a Muslim, Zuhdi Jasser here in Arizona. So we all know individually good Muslims. But we also must kind of take pause and say, wait a second. The two financial power centers of the West are obviously London and New York. And are we really going to have two Muslim mayors of the major financial power centers of the West? Like, let's just take a pause and take a step back and like, what does that say and what does that mean? And people say, well, it's irrelevant that he's Muslim. Well, you said it best. He wants to globalize the Intifada. And by the way, that just means globalized terrorism. He is the first mayoral candidate of any significance to say that he supports sanctions of Israel. I want you to understand that. That is America's most Jewish city, New York, and he wants to sanction Israel. And we're not allowed to mention that he's also Muslim. Like, I'm sorry, like that actually matters a lot. And he should be put on the record and ask questions about not just his faith, but also, do you think that it's good that we're continually importing hundreds of thousands of people that don't import our values? And you look at Ilhan Omar. Is Ilhan Omar a good example of someone that has pride and patriotism and gratitude for our country? It's not a good track record so far. And from Mamdani, you're seeing someone that has resentment-driven politics, super bad economics, terrible economics. But dare I also say, a radical cultural orthodoxy that is going to be introduced into America's largest city. One that will not make it a safe place for Jews, not a safe place increasingly, I think, for Western values and potentially Christians. And to say that you are in favor of boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel in America's most Jewish city, and it's just a coincidence that that guy happens to be Muslim, yeah, I think that's complete rubbish. And final point I'll say is this, is that London is a captured city. I don't know if you've been there recently, Megyn, but
awful.
It is a husk of its former self. It is terrible. And I don't like the fact that I go to Piccadilly Square and I see more Arabic than I see English, that I see more stores that are Yemen, Omani, Saudi Arabian. That is a conquered and a captured country. And Mamdani has to run on his own merits. He's his own individual person. But he has not given any indication that he is anything but a radical socialist and someone that is trying to continue the Mohammedan march in the West. Individual Muslims can be great members of American society. We all know them. But in the macro, in the big picture, are we really benefiting the more that we are importing Islamists into the West? I say no, and I think we should have a lot of caution making a Muslim socialist the mayor of America's largest city. And I know I'm in trouble for saying that, but I'll double down on it because I think that comes with a lot of baggage and a lot of trouble.
The response to not your argument, but your feelings have been espoused by others, including Benny Johnson, who said he tweeted, "New York City in 2001 will never forget." After the World Trade Center, New York City in 2025 elects Muslim jihadist. That's not what you called him. You did not call him this guy a jihadist.
No, I did not, for the record, I never said that.
You did not say that.
And I like Benny a lot, but I did not say that.
Yeah, but here's how Ryan James Gradowski responded to Benny. He says, it's a low IQ hot take. He says, Mamdani's not a jihadist. Sure, he hates Jews and supports a global movement to kill them because he's okay with the globalize the intifada chants. But he's also about queer liberation and women's rights. This is true. He's just an identity-based socialist where your value is connected to your race. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the true radical jihadis are not out there at pride parades and wanting to make a major part of their platform pride rights and free trans surgeries for minors, which is part of Mamdani's promise.
That's a good point.
Right? So
I agree.
He's an odd jihadi if he's a jihadi, according to Benny Johnson.
I like Benny a lot. I would not, and I won't say anything negative about him. I wouldn't use the word jihadi. But I will say, though, he has hatred for the West. And that we can all agree upon. Where does that hatred come from?
Yeah.
Does it come from his radical professor father? Does it come from the Shia Islam that he believes in?
But
we don't quite
wait,
know.
let me just ask you about this. I accept that. But does he hate it any more than the white Upper West Side women who surrounded me when I lived there?
No, that's
they
voting
feel exactly
for him.
as he does.
Totally. No, I agree. And I think, though, that he now represents, should we import more people like him? That obviously again, he was, I think, born here. I don't know, or did he?
He was born in.
I don't know.
He was born in.
Yeah.
Where was he born?
Kenya or something?
We just went over this. No, Uganda.
Ghana. Uganda. Yeah. And so, has this guy been a great picture of American assimilation? No. And that is the tragic truth of far too much Muslim immigration to the West. You see it in Rotterdam, you see it in Paris, you see it in London, you see it across Germany, is that the Islamist world does not assimilate well to the Western world. In fact, they create their own pockets of no-go zones. They try to take over City Hall, as you could see evidence in London and Rotterdam. They try to create own areas of their kind of Sharia-type law and radical Islam. I don't know if that's what Mamdani will do, but I know this. It doesn't matter because he is a perfect personification of what we call the red-green axis. The red-green axis is Marxism and Mohammedism that come together to destroy the West. And he is an agreeable spot for that. There's a lot of Muslims in New York, and there's a lot of, also to your point, white upper East Side higher income earners that have luxury beliefs that want to, whatever reason, see the suicide in New York City. What is shocking is that the richer you are in New York City, the more likely you are to support Mamdani. The poorer you are, the more likely you were to support Cuomo. And so
blacks and poor people in New York voted for Cuomo, and Asians and whites voted for Mamdani. It's amazing.
So I think and it's just, the point is this, is that it's obvious he hates the West. Where does that come from? I don't know. Now, if his name was Clark Smith, he might have the same sort of radicalism, but I do think that there is a pattern recognition that for whatever reason, people get really mad when you mention, which is like, wait a second, we now have Sadiq Khan, and we have Ilhan Omar, we have Rashida Tlaib, and now Mamdani, and none of these people have nice things to say about Western civilization. And either they or their parents are here on invitation only to the West. That is the distinction. We have made a conscious decision to bring millions of people from the Middle East or Muslims into America. Has that worked? Is it a good thing? Is it improving New York? Has this guy been a shining beacon of assimilation and adopting American values? Or is he an insurgent against New York City to try to break it down, make it into a poor version of Gotham? And so I want to make sure everyone in the audience understands. So there are some good Muslims out there, obviously, but as Islam has crept its way into the power centers of the West, it has not materially improved our life. In fact, it's done the exact opposite.
And that's being done intentionally. It's being done intentionally.
That's the point. And that's why I think it's important that I push the envelope a little bit on this.
I understand. So, yeah. I totally get it. Totally get it. This video, I've done years in coverage of these radical jihadis and radical Islamists and who they are. And Ayan has been my best teacher on all of it. I mean, just read any book she's written, read any article she's written. She's lived it firsthand. Okay. But what their goal is not a secret. You actually don't have to spend much time looking at this to know what their goal is. This video is making the rounds on X. It's from 1990. And it's someone speaking on behalf of the Muslim Brotherhood, a woman talking about the goals for infiltration in American cities.
American melting pot. We do not want to melt into American society and disappear. We want to go into American society with Islamic ideals and revamp their thinking. We want to revamp them. We want to turn them into Muslim individuals. We shouldn't have feelings of a distaste for them or intolerance, because they're potential Muslim. Education is one of the most important areas that Muslims have to address. And while our final objective, is not just to become part of the system that we experience now and that we see, our final objective is to create our own Islamic systems, and not only create Islamic systems for Muslims, but to look at all the other people who are sharing this country with us as potential Muslims. And in that long-range process of making America Muslim, all of America Muslim.
Yeah. So it's not a secret.
It's not a secret. And the most important data point is that, has this improved the West? Are we more united? Are we talking about things of prosperity and abundance and unity? Has this been about like a return to American values? Or does this feel kind of like an insurgency campaign that we have voluntarily invited into our society? And again, so people are going to attack me. My primary care doctor is Muslim. I've endorsed him for running for office, all that stuff. But when we look at our immigration policy, that continues to bring people in that don't assimilate, and they don't, I've said this before and it drives people nuts, and I don't care. Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Fundamentally, Islam is at war with freedom of speech, with freedom of worship, with freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, and separation of mosque and state. They don't believe in a separation of mosque and state. That's why so many of them are running for office, is that at its core, Islam is about power. The greatest man ever to live in the telling of Islam is a desert warlord. It's not a criticism, it's just a fact. And so as we're looking at this as Westerners, we should just, Jessica Tarlov calls me an Islamophobe. And my response was like, please stop using thought-terminating cliches and let's just have a discussion about this.
Yes.
Okay? It's not about like being, like, is it good for us? Has it improved our life? Do we want this to continue? Is this the best we can do? Is London doing better since Sadiq Khan took over? No, actually. They're doing far worse. The UK is a divided, sad, just somber museum is basically what it is. And so
listen to this. So I'm just going to add to it. Laura Ingraham tweeted this out. It's a related point, which I think is what you're trying to say. She wrote, You think New York City's turn to socialism and communism is just a New York thing? It's not. Uncontrolled immigration, greenlit since the 1980s by the Uniparty, is remaking every American community. We imported anti-Americanism, cultivated it in schools. Now comes the poisonous crop. And on top of that, you get, Zohran's, tweets from the past saying things like queer liberation means defund the police. He wants to open the prisons and get rid of the cops. Correct. And we're supposed to believe he loves the country.
Exactly right. And this also goes to show that the open border is not the only immigration debate we need to have on the right. We all agree an open border is bad. President Trump deserves just heroes welcome every day that our border is secure. The real fight is going to be legal immigration, because mass migration, green cards, asylum seeking, the asylum scam, you could break chain migration, family migration. That is how you get the downfall of your country via legal immigration. It's remade the entire body politic. New York City and LA are basically foreign occupied cities. The body politic themselves, many of the people were not born here. They don't speak the language. And I am all for an orderly America first legal immigration policy. You are too, Megyn. People that love the country and they assimilate and they come here. But we see it. That's not what's happening here. You're not seeing mass assimilation. You're seeing an embrace of values that are not our own. You're seeing an embrace of ideas that are not Western. You're seeing an ever radicalism seep through. And again, I just have to repeat this, which is America's largest city and most Jewish city is going to elect a mayor that wants to sanction the state of Israel, that wants to arrest Netanyahu if he were to come to New York. He's on the record saying that recently, just for the record.
That's what Mamdani says.
So I'm supposed to say, Mom, it has nothing to do with Mamdani being Muslim. Oh, the guy that wants to arrest the prime minister of Israel if he comes to a UN meeting.
Yeah. And things like globalizing the Intifada. I don't know. I'm here for it. Let's talk about it. Here, listen
100%.
to this. This played out a bit on CNN last night between Joy Reid, who was over there as a guest commentator, and our pal Arthur Aidala, who not only is a brilliant trial attorney, but is a lifelong New Yorker from Brooklyn and still lives in Brooklyn, lifelong. And take a listen to that exchange, SOT 38.
Is there evidence that Mamdani would return New York City to the 1970s hellhole Times Square? What is your evidence of that?
It's very simple. So he wants to raise taxes on people who make the most money. What eventually is going to happen is you're going to lose that tax base. Once you lose that tax base, our bonds will get degraded. Now the city budget will not be substantial enough to subsidize not only the cops, but the fire department, the sanitation department. Once you start losing Wall Street and people who pay $11,000, $12,000 a month to live on the Upper East Side.
People like Joy Reid don't get that.
I can't believe she's back on TV. I had no idea. It's amazing. I thought she was completely, totally discredited. Anyway, that's a whole separate note. But yes, she doesn't
but so
get
is
it.
CNN.
And honestly, that's a good argument. I think that's fine. The best argument is he wants to get rid of police and send social workers. He wants to open up the prisons. He wants to have cities.
He wants to get rid of private health insurance.
By the way, but the more we learn about this guy, the more we're going to understand he is about destabilization. It's like if you put together a plan of how do we turn New York into a hellhole? And here's the key. What happens after a hellhole? Well, you need a powerful then totalitarian, which is a perfect gateway to his dream, which is he wants to try to create a total mess and then he can assume more power, not with police and not with the actual power that government should have, but kind of a soft totalitarianism like we see in London, where everyone's afraid to speak their mind, where there's the speech police and there's potential blasphemy laws.
You're literally getting arrested over there for speaking your mind, just for the wrong opinions, literally getting arrested.
And Mamdani, again, I'll just have to repeat, he wants to globalize the Intifada. He wants to globalize terrorism. And so we as Westerners should be unafraid to say, wait, these are foreign ideas into our world and we don't like it. So
okay, wait, let me take the last 60 seconds on Andrew Cuomo, because the Democrat Party is to blame for this debacle. Why did you feel the need to resurrect a tired, worn, sex pest, old grandma killing loser Democrat who had already exploited the system, $5 million to write his book about how great he is. He was already a failure. Can you do no better? You can't find a young, vibrant Democrat who's not a fucking loon to run against this kind of a man so that we can prevent his ascension and save America's and the world's greatest city? They're to blame for all of this.
I totally agree, and I guess we're all behind Eric Adams now. Like, okay, I guess. Like, he's not been a good mayor, I guess.
How about Curtis?
I don't know if there's any chance for Curtis. I don't know.
There
I don't know New York
isn't.
politics that well. I
There
don't think so. I
isn't.
guess it's all about Eric Adams. But again,
It
let
is.
it be a wake-up call, everybody. And I encourage everyone in the audience, have the courage to call out what you know to be true. It's not like Islamophobic to say that you want to have some caution when a foreign ideology all of a sudden wants to be mayor of America's largest and once greatest city.
Yeah, look what's happening in London. You don't have to go far to find out what's happening.
Amen.
Charlie Kirk, always a pleasure, my friend. Great to see you, and I'll see you in July.
Great to see you. God bless. Thank you.
Look forward to it. Okay, we are back tomorrow with the fellas of Ruthless. We'll see all of you guys then.